Even if we could fully understand the life of the primitive, it would be no more than a metaphor for that of the truly primal man. Hence, the primitive affords us only brief glimpses into the temporal sequence of the two basic words. More complete information we receive from the child. Here, it becomes unmistakably clear how the spiritual reality of the basic words emerges from a natural reality. That of the basic word I-you from a natural association, that of the basic word I-it from a natural discreteness. The prenatal life of the child is a pure natural association, a flowing towards each other, a bodily reciprocity, and the life horizon of the developing being appears uniquely inscribed, and yet also not inscribed, in that of the being that carries it, for the womb in which it dwells is not solely that of the human mother. This association is so cosmic that it seems like the imperfect deciphering of a primeval inscription when we are told in the language of Jewish myth that in his mother's womb man knows the universe and forgets it at birth. And as the secret image of a wish, this association remains to us. But this longing ought not to be taken for craving to go back, as those suppose who consider the spirit, which they confound with their own intellect, a parasite of nature. For the spirit is nature's blossom, albeit exposed to many diseases. What this longing aims for is the cosmic association of the being that has burst into spirit with its true you. Every developing child rests, like all developing beings, in the womb of the Great Mother, the undifferentiated, not yet formed primal world. From this it detaches itself to enter a personal life, and it is only in dark hours when we slip out of this again, as happens even to the healthy night after night, that we are close to her again. But this detachment is not sudden and catastrophic like that from the bodily mother. The human child is granted some time to exchange the natural association with the world that is slipping away for a spiritual association, a relationship. From the glowing darkness of the chaos he has stepped into the cool and light creation without immediately possessing it. He has to get it up, as it were, and make it a reality for himself. He gains his world by seeing, listening, feeling, forming. It is encounter that the creation reveals its formhood. It does not pour itself into senses that are waiting, but deigns to meet those that are reaching out. What is to surround the finished human being as an object has to be acquired and wooed strenuously by him while he is still developing. No thing is a component of experience or reveals itself except through the No thing is a component of experience or reveals itself except through the reciprocal force of confrontation. Like primitives, the child lives between sleep and sleep, and a large part of waking is also sleep, in the lightning and counter-lightning of encounter. The innateness of the longing for relation is apparent even in the earliest and dimmest stage. Before any particulars can be perceived, dull glances push into the unclear space toward the indefinite, and at times when there is obviously no desire for nourishment, soft projections of the hands reach, aimlessly to all appearances, into the empty air towards the indefinite. For precisely these glances will eventually, after many trials, come to rest upon a red wallpaper arabesque, and not leave it until the soul of red has opened up to them. Precisely this motion will gain its sensuous form and definiteness in contact with a shaggy toy bear, and eventually apprehend lovingly and unforgettably a complete body. In both cases, not experience of an object, but coming to grips with a living, active being that confronts us, if only in our imagination. But this imagination is by no means a form of panpsychism. It is the drive to turn everything into a you, the drive to pan-relation, and where it does not find a living, active being that confronts it, but only an image or symbol of that, it supplies the living activity from its own fullness. Little inarticulate sounds still ring out senselessly and persistently into the morning, but one day they will have turned imperceptibly into a conversation. With what? Perhaps with a bubbling tea kettle, but into a conversation. Many a motion that is called reflex is a sturdy trowel for the person building up his world. It is not as if a child first saw an object, and then entered into some relationship with that. And the relation to that, which is a wordless anticipation of saying you, comes second. But the genesis of the thing is a late product that develops out of the split of the primal encounters, out of the separation of the associated partners, as does the genesis of the I. In the beginning is the relation, as the category of being, as readiness, as a form that reaches out to be filled, as a model for the soul, the a priori of relation, the innate you. In the relationships through which we live, the innate you is realized in the you we encounter. That is, comprehended as a being we confront and accepted as exclusive, can finally be addressed with the basic word, has its ground in the a priori of relation. In the drive for contact, originally a drive for tactile contact, then also for optical contact with another being, the innate you comes to the fore quite soon, and it becomes ever clearer that the drive aims at reciprocity, at tenderness, but it also determines the event of drive, which emerges later, the drive to produce things synthetically, or, where that is not possible, analytically, through taking and terror. But it also determines the inventive drive which emerges later, the drive to produce things synthetically, or, where that is not possible, analytically, through taking or tearing apart, and thus the product is personified and a conversation begins. The development of the child's soul is connected indissolubly with his craving for the you, with the fulfillments and disappointments of this craving, with the play of his experiments and his tragic seriousness when he feels at a total loss. Any real understanding of these phenomena is compromised by all attempts to reduce them to narrower spheres, and can be promoted only when in contemplating and discussing them we recall their cosmic metacosmic origin. We must remember the reach beyond that undifferentiated, not yet formed primal world from which the corporeal individual that was born into the world has emerged completely, but not yet the bodily, the actualized being that has to evolve from it gradually through entering into relationship. Man becomes an I through a you. What confronts us comes and vanishes. Relational events take shape and scatter, and through these changes crystallizes, more and more each time, the consciousness of the constant partner, the I consciousness. To be sure, for a long time it appears only woven into the relation to a you, discernible as that which reaches for but is not a you, but it comes closer and closer to the bursting point until one day the bonds are broken and the I confronts its detached self for a moment like a you. And then it takes possession of itself and henceforth enters into relations in full consciousness. Only now can the other basic word be put together. For although the you of the relation always paled again, it never became the it of an I, an object of detached perception and experience, which is what it will become henceforth, but as it were an it for itself, something previously unnoticed that was waiting for the new relational event. Of course, the maturing body as the carrier of its sensations and the executor of its drive stood out from its environment, but not only in the next to each other where one finds one's way, not yet in the absolute separation of I and object. Now, however, the detached I is transformed, reduced from substantial fullness to the functional one-dimensionality of a subject that experiences and uses objects, and thus approaches all the it for itself, overpowers it and joins with it to form the other basic word. The man who has acquired an I and says I it assumes a position before things, but does not confront them in the current of reciprocity. He bends down to examine particulars under the objectifying magnifying glass of close scrutiny, where he uses the objectifying telescope of distant vision to arrange them as mere scenery. In his contemplation he isolates them without any feeling for the exclusive, or joins them without any world feeling. The former could be attained only through relation, and the latter only by starting from that. Only now he experiences things as aggregates of qualities. Qualities, to be sure, had remained in his memory after every encounter, as belonging to the remembered you, but only now things seemed to him to be constructed of their qualities. Only by drawing on his memory of the relation, dreamlike, visual, or conceptual, depending on what kind of man he is, he supplements the core that revealed itself powerfully in the you, embracing all qualities. The substance. Only now does he place things in a spatio-temporal causal context. Only now does each receive its place, its course, its measurability, its conditionality. The you also appears in space, but only in an exclusive confrontation in which everything else can only be background from which it emerges, not its boundary and measure. The you appears in time, but in that of a process that is fulfilled in itself, a process lived through, not as a piece that is a part of a constant and organized sequence, but in a duration, whose purely intensive dimension can be determined only by starting from the you. It appears simultaneously as acting on and as acted upon, but not as if it had first been fitted into a causal chain, rather as, in its reciprocity with the I, the beginning and end of the event. This is part of the basic truth of the human world. Only it can be put in order. Only as things cease to be our you and become our it, do they become subject to coordination. The you knows no system of coordinate. But having got this far, we must also make another pronouncement, without which this piece of the basic truth would remain an unfit fragment. An ordered world is not the world order. There are moments of the secret ground in which world order is beheld as present. Then the tone is heard all of a sudden whose uninterpretable score the ordered world is. These moments are immortal. None are more evanescent. They leave no content that could be preserved, but their force enters into the creation and into man's knowledge, and the radiation of its force penetrates the ordered world and thaws it again and again. Thus, the history of the individual, thus the history of the race. The world is twofold for man, in accordance with his twofold attitude. He perceives the being that surrounds him, plain things and beings as things. He perceives what happens around him, plain processes and actions as processes, things that consist of qualities and processes that consist of moments, things recorded in terms of spatial coordinates and processes recorded in terms of temporal coordinates, things and processes that are bounded by other things and processes and capable of being measured against and compared with those others, an ordered world, a detached world. This world is somewhat reliable. It has density and duration. Its articulation can be surveyed. One can get it out and again and again. One can get it out again and again. One recounts it with one's eyes closed, and then checks it with one's eyes open. There it stands, right next to your skin if you think of it that way, or nestled in your soul if you prefer that. It is your object and remains that, according to your pleasure, and remains primally alien, both outside and inside you. You perceive it and take it for your truth. It permits itself to be taken by you, but it does not give itself to you. It is only about it that you can come to an understanding with others. Although it takes a somewhat different form for everybody, it is prepared to be a common object for you, but you cannot encounter others in it. Without it, you cannot remain alive. Its reliability preserves you, but if you were to die into it, then you would be buried in nothingness. Or man encounters being and becoming as what confronts him, always only one being, and everything only as a being. What is there reveals itself to him in the occurrence, and what occurs there happens to him as being. Nothing else is present but this one cosmically. Measure and comparison have fled. It is up to you how much of the immeasurable becomes reality for you. The encounters do not order themselves to become a world, but each is for you a sign of the world order. They have no association with each other, but everyone guarantees your association with the world. The world that appears to you in this way is unreliable, for it appears always new to you, and you cannot take it by its word. It lacks density, for everything in it permeates everything else. It lacks duration, for it comes even when not called, and vanishes even when you cling to it. It cannot be surveyed. If you try to make it surveyable, you lose it. It comes to fetch you, and if it does not reach you or encounter you, it vanishes. But it comes again, transformed. It does not stand outside you. It touches your ground, and if you say, "Soul of my soul," you have not said too much. But beware of trying to transpose it into your soul. That way, you destroy it. It is your present. You have made a present only insofar as you have it, and you can make it into an object for you and experience and use it. You must do that again and again, and then you have no present anymore. Between you and it, there is a reciprocity of giving. You say you to it, and give yourself to it. It says you to you, and it gives itself to you. You cannot come to an understanding about it with others. You are lonely with it, but it teaches you to encounter others, and to stand your ground in such encounters. And through the grace of its advents and the melancholy of its departures, it leads you to that you in which the lines of relation, though parallel, intersect. It does not help you to survive. It only helps you to have estimation. It only helps you to have intimations of eternity. It only helps you to have intimations of eternity. The it world hangs together in time and space. The you world does not hang together in space and time. The individual you must become an it when the event of relation has run its course. The individual it can become a you by entering into the event of relation. These are the two basic privileges of the it world. They induce man to consider the it world as the world in which one has to live and can also live comfortably, and that even offers us all sorts of stimulations and excitements, activities and knowledge. In this firm and wholesome chronicle, the you moments appear as queer, lyric dramatic episodes. Their spell may be seductive, but they pull us dangerously close to extremes, loosening the well-tried structure, leaving behind more doubt than satisfaction, shaking up our security. Altogether uncanny, altogether indispensable. Since one must, after all, return into the world, why not stay in it in the first place? Why not call to order that which confronts us and send it home into objectivity? And when one cannot get around saying you, perhaps to one's father, wife, companion, why not say you and mean it? After all, producing the sound you with one's vocal cords does not by any means entail speaking the uncanny, basic word. Even whispering an amorous you with one's soul is hardly dangerous, as long as, in all seriousness, one means nothing but experiencing and using it. One cannot live in the pure present. It would consume us if care were not taken that it is overcome quickly and thoroughly. But in pure past one can live. In fact, only there can a life be arranged. One only has to fill every moment with experiencing and using, and it ceases to burn. And in all the seriousness of truth, listen. Without it, a human being cannot live. But whoever lives only with that is not human. End of part 1.